Previously on The Business.
Now we welcome onto the business of sport, Sasha Martinengo. Hello.
It's great to be here.
Nice to
First
have
time
you.
on the FNB business show.
You've cracked the nod.
Yeah, you have.
Priya and Astrid and man.
Welcome, Sasha.
Awesome.
One of the people who inspired me to watch Formula One was Sasha Martinengo. After not knowing anything about the sport at all, other than there were fast cars and lots of money.
More people view Formula One in a season than any other sport. You know that.
Well, there you go. That's the man who will give you all the stats as well. Sash, first of all, just quickly, we've heard the story before, but you have an F1 show. You are the host of Supersport, the F1 the racing stuff with Gary and with Vic. But you've always had a passion for Formula One. We were talking about it yesterday in an interview. Just quickly, give us a background as to why you're sitting here today.
Well, I went to my first Formula One Grand Prix in 1976, and I followed it ever since. And no university ran a course on Formula One because it's the only subject I would have been able to perhaps get into. But I did get a university pass. And I've just followed it. I've followed it religiously. I went to as many Grand Prix as I could in South Africa. Even my matric dance in 1985 was on, at that stage, the last Grand Prix that we had. And I was late for my matric dance because I went to the Grand Prix. And then I was, of course, at the last Grand Prix in 1993 at Kyalami. And then since then, I've been fortunate enough since then to now to have gone to a lot of international Grand Prix and seeing how things have changed dramatically over the years.
So I want to know, 1976, did you say?
1976.
Okay, so I remember going to one early 70s as well.
Yes.
Was it the speed? Was it the cars? Was it the... What was it? You're a young kid.
I was a young kid.
Who took you to that?
My dad.
Okay.
My dad took me to that. He used to get these invites, and he decided, well, spend some time with his son, so take me along. He loves cars, but he really has, to him, it's just form of practicality, get you from A to B. And I just, being Italian, there were the red cars, and I most probably had a Ferrari shirt on in those days, and I just was fascinated by these characters. In those days, these were people that you went, wow, there's Gilles Villeneuve. Wow, there's so-and-so. And that, to me, it was the characters. And then, of course, the speed of the cars. But, I mean, at that age, I didn't really quite understand that. But it was the people. It was the characters.
We're talking about the business of motorsport and Formula One. I'd like to break this into two sections because they are very different. The first is local motorsport, and I'd like to talk about the state of affairs from a business point of view that local motorsport's in. Let's start with Kyalami. There's a very sad state of affairs that's going on there. Every time I drive past the track, when I enter the track, it's looking shoddy, Sash. The local motorsport industry, for me, seems to be lacking funding, lacking interest. What's going on?
Ian, it's a very complicated situation, specifically Kyalami. At the moment, there are three big players involved, and you've got to get consensus for all three for them to agree on something, and unfortunately, no one has been able to get that. But I would rather have the people concerned to actually come and tell us.
Fair enough.
But it is very, very worrying. We had Super Series there for the last weekend, for the last race of the season. And you just talk to any of the drivers, and they love Kyalami. I mean, it is a magnificent circuit. It really is. And it's just so sad that it's so derelict at the moment. It's so frustrating as well, because Johannesburg, Gauteng, is very much the money city, the money province. So when there's motor racing, you should have good crowds, everything should happen, but unfortunately there's no real marketing, and that's the biggest problem in South African local motorsport. There's no marketing behind it. There's no official big sponsor behind it as well. And I was having a chat to a senior guy the other day who's got his own race team and has been in motor racing for 30 years, and I said that their model has to be completely redeveloped of how they're doing it. You know, you've got a race day, Saturday, racing at a race circuit, but on the same day, you've got Supersport with 11 channels of football, rugby, cricket, tennis, golf, motor racing, etc., etc.
And dressage, which you love.
And dressage. And you've got to, and this is where, and unfortunately, these guys have never adapted to it. And I say it candidly, there's too much old wood running motorsport in this country. And that's it. I'll leave it at that.
I'd like to know from a sponsor's point of view. I mean, if I have 2 million rand floating around, which I want to put onto the side of a car, perhaps sponsor a team, I don't know what it costs. Let's not. Well, actually, let's go there.
I can tell you what it costs.
What does it cost?
Internationally? I found some very fun infographics. Sasha's very impressed because I went and did a little bit of
Very
research.
good.
So I found an infographic, and I did a little calculation. They show you all the positions on the car that can be branded.
Right.
Okay, and if you tally it up, the sponsorship exposure on the actual cars comes to about $85 million collectively
Right.
cost to sponsor. That's just with the logo on the car. Forget about all the other
Yeah, yeah.
costs.
Is that a Formula One car?
Yeah.
That's a lot of money.
$85 million.
Now, what does it cost to sponsor a local car?
Well, I mean, those are just negotiated. They're quite. That's why, unfortunately, Ian, the whole model is wrong. There are guys going out there and they want to go racing, so they just go and find somebody and say, okay, well, listen, give us $5,000 and we'll put your sticker on the car. Give us $10,000, we'll put the. It's not
really
formulated.
run
It's
like
not
a business.
regulated. It's not run as a business. It's run as an individual team running something, and you understand that. But there has to be a collective at the top to sit there and say, hold on a second, let's put the package together properly, and go and market it to market. And that's what it's about, is going there and saying, here is our product. This is what we can deliver. This is what. This is where we're looking in television. This is where we're looking in print. This is where we're looking in radio, etc., etc. And nobody's doing that, unfortunately. They're all just fighting and making excuses. And that's every time I go to a race event, all I hear are people are making excuses. And I sit there and say, why aren't you trying to find solutions? If there's a problem, find a solution. Oh, no, because this guy's an idiot and that guy's an idiot. And I just sit there and wash my hands and I say, you know what, guys, you unfortunately are sinking everything because of ego.
Yeah.
It's all ego.
And Sasha, what's the link between that and South Africa's potential success at attracting Formula One back?
Well, there's definitely a correlation. In the sense that surely somebody who's looking at Formula One and looking at South Africa, they're going to sit there and say, well, what's actually happening in the country? We still have very good drivers, riders in South Africa. Our Super Series, for example, I'm talking circuit racing. I'm not talking about rallying and any of those. I'm talking about circuit racing. Has got a tremendous history. And this is where we are looked at favorably in the world. And that's why Formula One does want to come back here. They're desperate to come back here. But you've got to put everything in place. And if you don't get, and we'll get into the Formula One structure of how it all works. But we do have tremendous history, tremendous success. In terms of Grand Prix, you know, one of the first ever Grand Prix on the calendar was East London. I mean, and that circuit is still there. So we have a great history. And you talk to anybody in the world of Formula One, and even the new guys. Guys like Lewis Hamilton, who was here a couple of years ago, and I spent a day with him at Kyalami. And when I first met him, I said, "Hey, it's great to have you at Kyalami." And he was, "Man, I've heard so much about this place." So the history's there, the stories are there. It's now just developing, and the culture is there. The motorsport culture is very much here in South Africa. You would get a lot more people going to a South African Grand Prix than you get going to the Korean Grand Prix or even the Indian Grand Prix, because we have the history.
You mentioned a very interesting fact the other day. Let's drift across to Formula One now. About you wrote an open letter and read it, and one of the things you mentioned in your letter was having a Formula One race in the capital of petrol heads, which is undoubtedly Durban. Let's be honest, there is a plethora of people who
You
love.
know people from Durban could be listening and are listening.
Well, I hope so.
Yes,
I hope so,
and watching.
and I hope they buy into this as well. You put forward a very good case for Durban. That would do wonders, wouldn't it, for the city?
Of course it would. I mean, a Grand Prix in South Africa anywhere would be brilliant. And it would be. Honestly, perhaps maybe not in the middle of the Free State, like the Velkom circuit from years ago with MotoGP, which is this magnificent track, but it's in the middle of nowhere. So you've got to actually look at the hubs. And Formula One wants to go to Cape Town. That's it. And the reason they want to go there is the backdrop is just so beautiful, and they can create a race, and there's places for boats to go, etc., etc., etc. As opposed to looking at where's the real money. And the real money is in Gauteng, and believe you me, very much in Durban. Now, I have it on very good authority that one of the proposals that was sent through to Formula One was a setup in Durban, which is backed fully by the UAE. They'd come in, build a purpose-built circuit. They would build in hotels very close to where the new airport is. Number one, you've got the climate. Doesn't matter what time of the year you run in Durban, it's always going to be fantastic. When it rains, it comes down a bit, and then it sort of goes away. So it's not like high-felt thunderstorms. And then I suppose in my little cynical jab, it's the capital of Zumaland. Now, why would Jacob Zuma, if he was the government, want to pour money into Cape Town? Because Cape Town's not run by his party. He might as well put it in Durban, where he's got the biggest following. Sure. So that was my little side of it. But, I think anywhere in South Africa to have a Grand Prix would be amazing. But first prize, in my opinion, would still be Gauteng.
Kriya, you wanted to jump in?
Yeah, Sasha, I have a question. How much does it cost to actually host a Grand Prix in a country? How much does it cost the country?
It's a great question. There are many parts of it to answer it. But first of all, what you've got to do is you've got to secure the rights. So if you sit there and say, we want to have a Grand Prix, and you go and negotiate with Mr. Eccleston, Bernie will come and sit there and say, okay, have you got a track? No, we haven't got a track. Okay, you've got to build a track. Oh, you got Kyle Army. Okay, you got to go and spend 400 million rand upgrading that track so that it is a sanctioned and ratified track by the FIA in terms of safety, etc., etc. So you're going to spend 400 million rand to do that. Then on top of it, he's going to sit there and say, in order for you to have the race, you are now going to pay me, and you'll sit there and go, okay, you're Africa, you haven't got as much money as the people in Singapore, so we're going to charge you $15 million a year per event, every year. You pay $15 million just to host the event. Okay, and that's basically from the track. The track's got to pay that kind of money. Then, of course, there are a whole lot of other costs that come in involved as well.
Is it then even feasible to have an event in South Africa?
It's a great question. It's a brilliant question. To make a profit in Formula One is very difficult in terms of hosting a race, unless you have local or national government backing. That's it. It's as simple as that.
And Sasha, isn't that what happened in Asia? In the Far East. Formula One's gone there, but those governments paid because 100%. They realized the positive spin-offs in terms of tourism, etc., etc.
Well, this is the fundamental elements about having a Grand Prix. If you look at the amount of money that gets spent by countries to have World Cup soccer or the Olympic Games, just look at what we spent here in South Africa.
Hundreds of millions.
Yep. But hopefully the spin-offs are what gets people attracted. They see South Africa completely differently. You got billions of people watching now and saying, wow, look at South Africa. And hopefully those people who have put packages together on the television stations highlight the beauty of the country. Formula One basically puts on a World Cup final 19 times a year. It's that simple. And it sounds like, oh, you're talking rubbish. That's what they do. They go in, they take over for 4 days, they arrive into a city and they say, here we are, thank you very much. You have a Friday free practices, the track cars are out Saturday, and then Sunday the race. So, but the question was, how do you make a profit, or is it viable? As long as you've got government buy-in or local government buy-in, it's going to be very, very difficult to make a profit. But the spin-off, and if you look at various models that have been done, and I saw one recently, if you have a 7-year contract with Formula One and you're paying your $15 million with 5% interest every year, et cetera, blah, 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 you take into account you have to redo the track a little bit, et cetera. So you're taking all these costs in. By the end of year 4, you actually will turn a profit. That is hoping that the same amount of people are coming to the event. Now, you can't guarantee the same amount of people coming to the event because things might change in the world of Formula One. You might have domination like we have at the moment. That will have an effect on people who watch TV and people who go to a trackside event. They're not going to pay their 3,000 rand for a ticket to sit there and watch one driver completely destroy the field. But it's not, those numbers are pretty small. People said that, Sebastian Vettel's dominating. Yeah, no one's watching. Believing me, it's a small amount of people when you look at the big picture.
Sasha, I want to talk about the teams. there is so much money when it comes to teams, and so much money put into R&D, the parts of a Formula One car, the amount of engines, the
innovation that's
the
going
innovation,
on
the
there.
cutting edge stuff. I mean, what we see trackside is the very tip of that iceberg of a mountain of people working in telemetry behind in the garages, and then back at the factories working. The technology, I get goosebumps talking about it, because it's mind-boggling how much goes into that. You've explained that to me. Does it actually make them money? A Ferrari, for example, a Renault, a Lotus, they're pouring this money into these teams. Do they see a return? How does it work?
Motor racing, there's a classic saying: how if you want to make $1 million in motor racing, start with $1 billion. It's quite simple. It is endless pit of money.
Yeah.
That's what motor racing is about. People go motor racing because they love motor racing. Yes, it has changed. It's become a very profitable business, okay, for people like Formula One management, etc., but also for the teams. The teams have managed to use that innovation and become partners with other manufacturers all over the world to show off and showcase what their brilliance is in terms of technology. Formula One is the pinnacle of motorsport. There's no other form of motor racing in the world that comes close to the technology that is used in Formula One. Formula One is basically very comparable to the airline industry. The airline industry, they sit and spend billions of dollars to try and make an airplane go in the air so that we're all going to be safe. Formula One sit there and try and make a car with restrictions, whatever the restrictions are, go as fast as possible, using the technology, the best technology as possible, so that can in future be related to normal road-going cars. Semi-automatic gearboxes came from Formula One. Carbon fiber came from Formula One. Just about everything that you use in your car, no matter how sophisticated or small or simple it is, comes from Formula One. The only thing they don't use in Formula One are airbags. They're too heavy and they don't really need it.
Oh, well, you answered the question. I was going to go, but why? So let's take a team like, I don't know, a kind of middle of the road team, a team that's doing nicely but not winning massive races. They've got a good supply of money coming. They're on track. They've got their drivers and their teams. Where are they getting that funding from? Is it primarily from sponsors? Is it from the motor manufacturer, the head office? Where's that cash coming from that they're burning?
Yeah, listen, it's another great question. Don't forget, 2008 we had the whole demise of world economies, and believe you me, Formula One was also affected by this. I mean, it's just simple economics.
Yeah.
And if you sit there and think about it, we want to go race 2 cars for 19 times a year around a racetrack, and we're going to spend $400 million. It doesn't really make sense, does it? It doesn't really make sense. So, I mean, so you sit there and work it out. But let's take, for example, a team like Sauber. Mm-hmm. Sauber is an independent team. It's based in Switzerland. It uses a Ferrari engine and Ferrari gearbox and Ferrari components. And then it's got Brembo brakes, use the same tires as everybody, Pirelli, and it's got 2 racing drivers. That's it. They've got to sit there and work out what their budget is for the year. And in that budget, and this is unfortunately why they get so siphoned out of all of their money, has got to be development. Now, if you come out into the Formula One season, your car looks magnificent, you've got 2 great drivers, but they put it on the track and it's a dog. All of those monies that you were going to hopefully be using as profit for the end of the season has to now go into development so that you don't land up at the back end of the grid. Because where you finish on the grid also determines the allocation of television money that you will receive for all of the points that you get. So you've got a driver, and it's something that we've been very critical of very much this year. We're very much in a pay driver situation. Because times are very, very tough, a team like Sauber, a team like Marussia, they can't really afford to sit there and say, hi, Astrid, we want you as the driver, come in here and we're going to pay you $3 million. They want Astrid to come and say, I'd like to drive your car, and by the way, here's $8 million.
So paying for the drive?
Paying for the drive, got their big sponsors.
That's a big shift in the model.
Massive. Big, and come with their own money and their own backers. So that funds the team. Okay, so they've got that. Then they've got various sponsors on the side of the car that pay. And as Astrid mentioned earlier, just for your stick over there is $2 million for the season. Then it's $15 million on the engine cover, and on the back wing, it's another $20 million. So they of course, they attract the sponsors, but times are tough. It's not as easy as when we were in the tobacco era. For example, the tobacco spent a huge amount of money. As soon as tobacco pulled out, they had to find new people, and the banks stepped in. Then the banks, banks
we all know what happened to the banks.
Banks all went dog or whatever.
Yeah.
So there's still a lot of money around. There really is. It's just a question of being the right market and ensuring that they are going to get the value out of the team that they sponsor.
What's the most expensive race in terms of setup and kind of infrastructure on the Formula One calendar?
I think it's Malaysia, isn't it?
Yeah, I think Malaysia, I think specifically because they also pay a huge amount of money to Formula One management. So I think they pay about $20 million per race, whereas a track like Monaco pays zero because of its history, because of its culture. But to set up a Formula One Grand Prix on its own, you got to believe is well in the region of between $20 and $40 million. Yeah, just to set it up. Yeah.
So, where to from here? The new engines come in next season. Is that right?
Yeah, we got total new regulations next year.
And is that going to affect monies? Is it going to
Huge.
affect?
Huge.
Just talk us through that.
It's huge. I mean, the three engine manufacturers for next year, which are Renault, Mercedes, and Ferrari, have all mentioned that they've spent over $100 million in development, just development, $100 million to develop a 1.6-liter V6 turbo engine for next season. It's got to configure to certain weights, etc., etc. Then they've got to work out, because they're going to have a KERS system as well, and these engineers and designers have to do is try and work out a package where the engine and the turbo goes and the KERS, so that number one, it gives balance of the car, but it still gives the power of the car, and thirdly, that it's fuel efficient. When the hell did you ever think Formula One would go, oh, we're going to be more fuel efficient? But they are sort of trying to go green. So you've got 100 liters of fuel for a race. I'm like, come on, man.
Who makes these decisions about what those things are going to be every year, that just push that envelope of innovation onto the teams all the time?
Well, as much as everyone, there's a lot of people out who just sit there and think Bernie Ecclestone sits and writes on his piece of paper,
what should we do next
we're going to
year?
do this or
Yeah.
whatever. There's a technical working group, okay, which includes a member from every single team. Okay, so they all sit together. There are certain teams that have slightly higher voting power. For example, Ferrari will have slightly higher voting power. McLaren would have the same. And perhaps now, with the way Red Bull are, they might even have a say in that as well. That all depends on the agreement that is done. But they will all sit together and say, okay, the recommendation by the FIA is that we need to cut down on engine costs, or we need a smaller engine, and we need this, and we want to do this. So they'll give them 10, 20 different variables, and the technical working group will sit there and go through it and sit and say, okay, this is feasible, and eventually come to a working document, which will sit there and say, okay, these are our proposals from the teams that they can manage it. Not necessarily afford it, but they can manage it. So, next year you're going to have certain teams that are going to pay a huge amount of money just for the engine supply. And that's where all of a sudden these costs are. So next year you got Marussia, for example, who's going to get a Ferrari engine. They're going to have to pay $30 million for the season just for the engines.
It's no different, actually, to a board,
Yeah.
shareholder,
Yeah.
executive management setting targets for
100%.
for companies and structures, and
It's fascinating,
no
actually.
different.
The,
It is a business.
the problem with this conversation is that I could do this for another hour. It's fascinating.
I have a quick question.
Go
quick
on.
one.
Go on.
All right,
Go
Sash,
for
you
it.
mentioned yesterday that Bernie Ecclestone has a rights on what the Ferrari or what any of the F1
Yeah.
cars sound like. Explain that one quickly.
He has a patent, right?
Yeah, well,
Maybe.
he's got to pay. Listen, Mr. Ecclestone is a very, very clever man.
Kriya's eyes have gone huge.
He's a very, very clever man. It's actually a pity I didn't bring a paddock pass actually in. But on the back of a paddock pass says the use of the recording of the sound, etc., etc., is owned by FOA, etc., Administration Limited, Patent, etc., etc. Yes, I mean, listen, you can't stop anybody. I mean, nowadays with camera phones and all that stuff, we all go and record that stuff and we put it up on YouTube. At one stage, he tried to block everything, and eventually he just sort of like went, you know what? People let them watch. As long as the full race is not on there, then he's happy with it. But yes, he owns the rights to the sound of Formula One.
You know, if I had
what the car sounds.
If I had that much money, I'd also buy something like that.
Exactly.
But I mean,
and he now only owns what, 5% his stake now.
well,
What is it?
you see,
I mean,
this is what I think the business of Formula One. Just want to end off because we've got to try and figure out how it is run. Who owns what?
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
you've got a whole lot of these companies that are based in Jersey, which is like a tax haven of the world, and you've got this main company called Delta Topco. Okay. Now Delta Topco, main shareholders are 3 companies, but the biggest one is CVC. Now CVC's up there. Okay, and then you've got LBI, and you've got a German bank or something that's in there as well, and then because Bernie sold a lot of his Alpha Prima shares to CVC, but he still controls everything. And then he's got Bambino Holdings, okay, and then he's got Slick, and then he's got FOA, and then he's got FOCW, and then everyone else. So
I'm so confused.
we are all confused. So as much as CVC have paid Bernie a lot of money, Bernie Ecclestone still runs everything. And even though he's in court right
Today,
As we speak.
As we speak.
he's in court.
Yep.
He's getting sued for 170 million
Yeah.
It's a week's interest
dollars
for
or
him,
something, and he just sat there
If
and
that.
says, he says it's just nonsense. He says it's pocket change. He said it was insurance. People call it a bribe. He said it was insurance. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. Then next year he's got another $40 million or whatever. But the whole thing about it is Bernie Ecclestone still controls how Formula One is run. And believe you me, it sounds bizarre, but autocratic management is sometimes not too bad. But he's not as autocratic as what everybody else thinks. He just sits there and makes sure that the trucks are in the right place. Everything is spotless. That's what he brought to Formula One. Everything works clockwork. A race starts at 2 o'clock. There's no delay, unless it's pouring with rain and monsoons or whatever. The trucks are parked within millimeters of each other. This is your area for your stand, and it's got to be a specific size. It's got to be a specific kind of quality. All of those things have made Formula One what it is today. And that's what Bernie Ecclestone brings to the party. I remember being in Monza in 2001 and walking up, and I had a paddock pass ticket, and there was Bernie Ecclestone in the car park, the VIP car park, directing the guy with the Marshall jacket, telling him what to do about the cars. And I just sat there and I went, that is what it's about. He's so hands-on, he's passionate, but he's also a businessman.
Yep.
And that's the thing. He went out and said, you know what, I will make you rich. Do you want to play? And they said, well, no, Bernie, you take the risk. So he took the risk. And when he got rich, everyone said, yeah, but where's our cut? Now he gives them a bit of a cut and they're still moaning. And he says, hey, my baby. Love you, Mr. E.
I think it's fascinating. The Business of Formula One with Sasha Martinengo. If you want to get the repeat podcast of this, it will be available on balls.co.za in the days to come. Notice, Maz, how that window just gets bigger and bigger. We're all chilled about that. That is the business for today. Thanks, Sash, for joining us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I love that. That was good. Can we do it more?
We should do
Yeah.
more. We should indeed.
The Business on balls.co.za. Brought to you by FNB Business Banking.